because flat Earth is the one that would change everything. Why? Why, Commander? Why, Adrian? Because it would destroy, it would shatter your frame of reality. And that's why David Icke is so important. Because I was mega David Icke for 15 years, just about
Mhm.
almost. And because one of my favorite books he did was called The Perception Deception. And that's why they're controlling your perception of reality. Because if they can control that frame, you'll do whatever they say and you'll think it's real, and to boot, you'll fight for it. Yo,
Hey, hey,
what's
the
up, man?
commander himself. What's happening, man?
He is here. He's arrived fashionably late.
That's good, man. Well, I'm glad to meet you. What's the go with Commander? Can you give me a backstory on the Commander Davenport? How did that come about?
Yeah, I'd love to. You're the first person who's ever asked.
Really?
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah,
So
go for it.
Commander is James Bond's rank in
Yeah.
Her Majesty's Secret Service. And then Davenport came from a World War II movie called Into the White. And there was an RAF pilot named Captain Davenport, but calling yourself captain is sort of gay. So I just merged the two, and now
Yep.
I'm Commander Davenport.
That's amazing. Cool. Well, I've never had a commander on the show before, so this is a privilege and an honor. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, people say, were you in the military? No, no, I'm the commander of the Matrix.
Yeah,
Big difference.
that's a huge responsibility too.
It's a lot of weight to carry, but here we are.
Yeah, someone's got to do it, right? That's good. I appreciate you coming on board, man, and having a chat with me. We've got a bunch of interesting conversations to have. Um, flat Earth and all that sort of stuff is such a polarizing topic. I think post these conversations that I've had in the past, I'm either going to get rained on with a bunch of hate and just disdain from people. I'm going to lose a bunch of people that might have thought I thought you were okay up until this point, and then they're gonna exit. But I also think you attract a lot of people that don't have, I guess, the courage or the conviction to speak about topics like this openly. Do you find that commonplace in your world?
Absolutely. Frequently, daily basis, I get people who, I mean, I'll tell you about the whole range. I get the young guys who are
Mhm.
like 16, 17, 18, who are like, hey, I'm feeling isolated in my friend group because all they do is talk about sports. And, I see right through that kind of stuff. So, I'm just looking for someone to talk to. There's one side of the spectrum. And then the other side is I get married women who say, hey, it sounds funny, but hey, I married a bot, or I had kids with a bot, and I'm starting to realize that the man I married is a fucking idiot, is an agent. And
Oh.
I had one woman who, well, we'll circle back to the courage part of it, but I had one woman who said, hey, I just had a kid with this guy, and he works for I think it was the Venezuelan government, but he's an engineer for the Venezuelan government.
Mhm.
And she said she brought up the moon landing stuff, and this is a guy who works in flight of some sort, perhaps just aviation uh, on a country level. I don't know if it's space stuff, but he's
Mhm.
real against even the moon landing being a bunch of nonsense. So a
Oh,
lot of
wow.
people contact me for honestly just someone to talk to. You know,
Yeah,
I I
I
I
can
get
relate
it.
to
I
that.
get it. Like you mentioned, it's the most polarizing thing, and I've been doing this, I think, for 77 days. I think it's my 77th day on social media doing this, and nothing. I've said this before, but nothing brings out the wolves like flat Earth does, and there's a
Yeah,
big reason for that. Bro,
sure.
you can talk about anything you want. You can talk about this stuff. You can talk about our food being poisoned, the air being poisoned, the water being poisoned. You could talk about 9/11. Nothing,
Yeah.
but nothing will bring the death threats, the ridicule, the loss of family and friends. Like nothing will bring it on you like flat
Yeah.
Earth will.
Can I just pause you for a second? Where you're looking at the moment, are you looking into like your laptop or something like that? Because
Is it
it's
too
like,
much?
no, no, no. It's just like where you're looking from my angle. It's like you're looking away from me like this. But if you just
Oh,
turn like to your right, maybe you're looking straight at me. Does that
there we
make
go.
sense?
Yeah, how's that?
That's perfect. Yeah. Now we're looking at each other.
No, I'm on two different monitors, so I had it on my other
Oh,
monitor.
okay. Now I see what's going on. Yeah, got it.
That's better.
All right. Camera two is where we're at.
Okay, there we
Yeah,
go.
that's
That
perfect.
should be okay.
Legend. Yeah, so I agree. Look, it is interesting because in this day and age, in this time period that we're in, in the last 6 years has just been like a fucking like just an absolute mind fuck of events that have gone on, which have switched gears for a lot of people. You're either on one side or the other, or you're in between, like, the wheels are slowly turning and you're starting to come online about all the goings on of the world. So everyone wakes up in their own timeline. That's what I find anyway. It's kind of like I used to scream from the rooftops during COVID and tell people what a bunch of bullshit this was. And I used to get very angry and I would get frustrated that people couldn't see what I was seeing that was so obvious. And I was just like, how can you not see this? Just like, virtually shaking them by their shoulders, right? And just sort of trying to rattle them awake. But then eventually I had to succumb to, I guess, like a surrender, right? To the fact that everyone's going to wake up in their own time, and I can't force anyone against their will to see what I see. So eventually you kind of had this sort of like moment of, all right, man, I'll just present the information, and whatever you do with that information is on you. Obviously I was a lot more forceful with my kids and things like that. I was like, this ain't fucking happening. But I think the point that I'm trying to make is like, even amidst all of that chaos, and you've got people that are on the side of the government's doing this is what's in the air, this is what's in the food and the water, and they're definitely trying to inject some shit in our bodies and force us to do things we don't want to do. But then as soon as you mentioned like flat Earth and the moon and all, they're like, whoa, hey, hold your horses, buddy. It's like, listen, man.
Yeah.
I have this thing with my kids. They're like, ah, fuck. Like as soon as I do it, like my eldest son, he's like, I'm out. You know what I mean? I'm out. Just leave me alone with this stuff. Which is like I love
How
him,
old is he?
obviously. He's nearly 20. So it's like, but I mean, look,
Yeah.
and I don't begrudge or hold them against them because I was like that for a long time. I mean, like, if you want to go back to vaccines, like, I vaccinated all of my kids as soon as they were born. They're like, you got to get your shots. I'm like, yeah, here's my kid, just a, a hours old or a day old. And you're like, fuck yeah, just go and do what you got to do. So I have been ignorant for many decades, until probably, I don't know, maybe 2005-ish. Like, it's kind of like around the zeitgeist kind of movies, like all of that kind of stuff. All of that was my introduction to the world
Me too.
banking system. Yeah, really, there you go. Yeah. But anyway, it is even people who you could say like awake is a bastardized term these days, but it's like even people you could say are awake and aware of the goings on and have gone down many rabbit holes. As soon as you mention flat Earth, they're like, hey, I don't know about that one.
Well, like you said, it's about that surrender. And a lot of people mention that to me in comments and DMs as well, because they see that I don't argue and I have no interest whatsoever in debating. I was approached by I think he's the third biggest podcaster in the world. And
Mm.
he was trying to get me to debate some hotshot. And I I told him, look, man, a debate is not going to help illuminate humanity. That's actually just cheap entertainment. It's slop. I hate to overuse that term, but it truly is. It's not going to lead anyone in the right direction. In fact, it's only going to further polarize people.
Agreed.
And pardon me, I'm in this new. I'm an first wave flat earther, 2014, 2015, but I'm a new breed in that I don't care to argue with you at all. I'm not here to convince you. I'm not going to go back and forth with you. I'm not going to provide proof. That's what my page is. It's proof and evidence. But as far as going back and forth, I'll pass. You could say what you want. I'll pass.
Yeah. Look, the hardest thing I think is like I am not academically intelligent. So at least that's
Me
part
either.
of my belief system is like I've just never really good at school remembering facts and all of those details. But I think when you're going against years and years of this is what it says in this book, therefore it is true because this person eons ago said it, it's just part of that indoctrination that is very hard to get out of that spell. Like you have to really again, like surrender to being open to new possibilities and parking all of your old belief systems for at least a moment to allow new information in. And that is the stonewall that you get when people are, I guess, just regurgitating the academic rhetoric that comes through about this is what science says and this is what the books say. So it's very difficult to argue against that. It's like and in probably a good example, like in relationship, you can't argue logic with emotion. You know what I mean? Like you can't sort of, if someone's highly emotional and you're just spitting facts about the situation, it's like it just doesn't work. You need to be on the same playing field, or at least on the same vibe. So anyway, it's pretty hard. But what was like your turning point? Because you said like before 77 days on social media, which is like just you're a baby basically in terms of
Baby.
yeah, putting all of that together. But there must have
So it
been a decisive point, in terms of like where you felt comfortable coming out with this information.
Yeah. 2004, 2005 with Zeitgeist and Loose Change. So that's where it all started.
Got it.
And then in 2010, my dad died of cancer, and I watched that whole process. I was a young man. I was 17 or 18,
Right.
and so I was able to see that whole process while being essentially powerless in the eyes of the law and having anything to do with his treatment or anything like that. Um, so that was another defining moment that really shook me awake, and I saw how the pharmaceutical industry treats people and how they go about their business. um, and then the years came and went, and 2014, 2015 was flat earth, and then it's still been 10 years since then. And the other defining factor was working myself to death, bro.
Yeah.
Working myself to death for pennies, um, and just staying in that matrix cycle of being paycheck to paycheck. And it's funny because the moment it was in February, I'll just give you the timeline. February 16th, I woke up in my bed. It was a rough morning, and I said, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done going to work. I'm done with this nonsense. I'm done in this rat race bullshit. And it's funny, I read this quote about a month ago. Let me not get too ahead of myself. So then I went and stayed in a cabin for 2 months and really reconnected, like out in the middle of nowhere. I did have running water, but other than that, it was out in the middle of nowhere. So I was able to reconnect with nature and get out of, the concrete jungle that is Chicago. Um, and then I was, the quote I read. It was something, it may have been Tesla or it may have been one of the philosopher guys like Kierkegaard or something like that. But he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, when you have the courage to be your most authentic self, the eye of providence has no choice but to follow you. And basically, like, if you have the balls to be the truest you, God or the universe has no choice but to have your back. And it's funny because I've been on this path for a little over 2 months, and that is true because I've never been my authentic self. I've always bent the knee to people. I always took advice from people. They were always wrong, and I always knew it deep in my heart. And the moment I started listening to myself, everything started coming together.
Wow. So, what are you saying? Like 2 months ago, you decided this?
Yeah, 2 months ago. So I stayed in the cabin, and then I woke up in the cabin, and I said, you know what? I'm going to. I think I used the word get famous, but I'm
I know
not
what you mean.
a Hollywood. I'm not a Hollywood celebrity, but it
Sure,
was
sure.
like I'm gonna do my thing, And since then, it's just been explosive.
Yeah.
35K followers on Instagram in 2 months for a
Oh,
nobody is unheard of. People, people, they. I don't want to you know, prop myself up and say I'm some kind of leader, but people follow people who they see are not afraid to be their authentic selves. And
absolutely.
they see how I handle conflict. They see how I handle debate. And like you said earlier, it gives people the courage to, not everybody's a coward. And sometimes people just need to see somebody else standing up for themselves. And they go,
Yeah.
wait a minute, I can stand up for myself too. And I think that's what it's all about. People follow me because they see that I have nothing to hide. If you want to talk to me about aerodynamics and nuclear fission,
Mm,
I'm going to tell you I have no idea what you're talking about. You know what
yeah.
I mean? And there's a certain power to that because I see on TikTok Live and I see on different debate podcasts and different forums and formats, people are debating scientific stuff, and Commander gets in there and he goes, I'm not afraid to tell you I have no idea what Einstein said in 1938. No, tell me so I can learn. What did he say?
Yeah,
I
sure.
don't know, because it doesn't take academia to be aware that you're on a flat non-rotating plane. That's one of the biggest points that I wanted to talk about today.
Yeah.
um, is there's part of the indoctrination is that we need that you need a PhD. As you know, you're in Australia, right?
Yes.
So you were plagued with that bullshit the last 5 years. Is I'm sorry. Do you have a PhD, Adrian? You better
Yeah.
keep your mouth shut, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's part of the thing that I'm here to break is
Mm,
those people, they have a track record of being wrong pretty much 100% of the time. So we're going to drift away from that, and we're going to go with intuitive knowingness and awareness. Do I have a high IQ? Perhaps, but IQ is nothing compared to divine awareness and divine wisdom.
yeah.
I don't
EQ.
need I don't need gravitational formulas and equations to know that I don't live on a spinning ball in space.
Mm,
So that's part of my message, is to drift away from that heavy indoctrination that you're not allowed to have an opinion unless you have some sort of degree.
yeah. But that, from my understanding, you come from a very academic background, is that right? Weren't you like in the medical industry, or you were like a paramedic or something like that?
Yeah, yeah, I was a paramedic. That has nothing to do with any of this, though.
Yeah, okay. But it's
That was
something to do with your train of thought. You like in terms of you would have gone through some sort of schooling and education to memorize a bunch of shit, right? But in order to
yes,
think like you think now requires a 180 on how you perceive information, because I know what you're talking about. Like, and again, in Australia, we certainly did get the "you're not a doctor or a virologist, so what would you know?" And that was the birth of this podcast, because I was like, you know what, you're right.
good.
I fucking don't know. I'm not a virologist, and so I just started interviewing them, right? The doctors and the virologists and all the people that knew what they were talking about, and that was how that come about. But I also am a very, like, my background leading into all of this was I used to teach business owners to sort of start, or people to start side hustles and businesses with their knowledge. So I would say, like, hey, Commander, you know a lot about this fucking flat earth stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you have put in thousands of hours of effort and work and dedication to your craft. So even though you don't have a PhD or you don't have a certificate, you are, in my mind, an expert because I know fuck all about what you're talking about. So you can educate me on your knowledge. So that's how I was sort of training people and coaching them to kind of be the author of their own story, right? So in COVID was like, yeah, I am not a virologist or a doctor of any description, but I can certainly lean on evidence to support the knowledge that I'm trying to bring across. And I think part of that was just like you just have to observe what's going on, right? So the reality on the TV versus my reality outside was vastly different. So that was my like, okay, I'm not academically inclined. However, everyone's talking about this worldwide pandemic that everyone's dropping dead from, yet I'm down the beach with my fucking latte with everyone else, like enjoying the sunshine, watching my business turn to shit because I can't open it up. It's just, it was weird. But anyway, I don't want to divert a lot of attention away from that. I want to get back to obviously the flat earth, the spinning globe model and your belief systems and knowledge around that because I am on your side to a large degree, but at the same time, there's a lot of things that I don't have answers to, or at least questionable. Like, it only gets you so far, and then there's another sort of range of questions and that require answers. So I don't know where you want to start with this, or how you kind of, break people into this train of thought, because we're obviously like very much convinced from every which angle that we are rotating this way and spinning around that way, and then the sun and the moon are doing this, and it's just like, and gravity and all the rest of it that's pulled into it. Everyone's very much discombobulated to think like, I don't know what's up and what's down, so I've got no choice but default to the information that's in the textbooks. You with me?
Yes. I would start with Isaac Newton. Pardon me. A lot of the lies, I studied Isaac Newton about 10 years ago, and I discovered a lot of interesting things. And a lot of the lies are based on him. And I don't want to get too conspiratorial and getting into who funded him and why he was propped up on why we worship him, basically.
Hmm.
But what I discovered was he I'll use this term loosely. He was an agent essentially, and the truth about him is no one knows who he was as a man. All we know is that he was some brainiac, and we're taught stupid things about an apple falling from a tree, therefore spitting balls in space. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I would start with Isaac Newton. We don't even have to get into yet the impossibility of a spinning ball in space and how there's no evidence of that whatsoever. But the way I frame it is relying on Isaac Newton to relying on Isaac Newton for your frame of reality is like relying on Adolf Hitler for humanitarian advice. Like, you have to understand who he was as a man. He was a magician, first of all. He was an occultist. He was deep in esoteric wisdoms, esoteric knowledge, esoteric rituals, and all those sorts of things, which are not taught. And I have one of his books. Oh no, it's in the bedroom. I have one of his books. It's like this thick. It's a compendium of a couple of his works. And I'm not going to lie and say I understand it all because I don't. It's a lot like have you heard of Helena Blavatsky? Have you heard of her? She's one of those writers. There's like two or three authors that you just can't read. Like, it's too brainy. It's way too out there, but you have to read one page at a time and then take a break. But he he what he did was there's no doubt he was a brilliant man. There's no doubt. High IQ. But like we just talked about, that means nothing compared to divine wisdom and divine awareness and, God gifted awareness of hyper awareness of what's going on around you. Um, and he was basically hired to force this ball earth nonsense, and then he threw in other things, um, like the moon's effect. on the ocean's tides and things that make no sense, that are just objectively stupid, objectively false. If the moon affected the Earth's tides, the tides would be uniform. It would affect all bodies of water, yet it doesn't. It only affects salt water. So there's just a million things that you can poke into all that and just say, maybe this guy isn't who I thought he was, and that's why flat earth requires an ego death. Is you have to, like you experienced, I imagine, during either zeitgeist or during probably the beginning of COVID, where you
Mm.
looked in the mirror and you said, one, is this hill the hill to die on? And two, I was fucking wrong. Because a lot
Mm.
of people don't understand that. I went to public school. I was taught Isaac Newton and spinning balls in space too. But eventually, somewhere along the way, and it is a long process, I had to come to grips with the fact that I was wrong. My frame of reality was wrong. I was lied to. And now it's so out in the open because of this is going to go on YouTube, right, Adrian?
Yeah.
Okay, so can we talk about the files?
Yeah, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah. Okay. Um, So I'm not one of those zealots who gets into all that, but I do want to just bring it up real quick and say it's the perfect example of the groundbreaking thing that I saw some David Icke on your profile too. We'll get to that, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
for
the
sure.
groundbreaking thing that was smashed in our faces. They kicked you in the face with it.
Mm.
Nothing changed. Nothing. And there's a reason for that, because flat Earth is the one that would change everything. Why? Why, Commander? Why, Adrian? Because it would shatter your frame of reality. And that's why David Icke is so important. Because I was mega David Icke for 15 years, just about,
Mhm.
almost. And because one of my favorite books he did was called The Perception Deception. And that's why they're controlling your perception of reality. Because if they can control that frame, you'll do whatever they say, and you'll think it's real, and to boot, you'll fight for it. You'll
Mm.
fight in that frame and then laugh at people like me, which in my opinion is crazy. So anyway, Isaac Newton, the impossibilities of the spinning ball in space. A lot of people, especially in my comments, they say things like, "We'll explain a lunar eclipse." Well, slow down. The lunar eclipse is something I've been studying for 13 years. I've been looking into what the hell is going on in the sky. This is not something, so this has to do with education. This is not something that you can uh, say to someone very quickly. Um, it takes years to understand, to even begin to grasp what the moon is, what it's doing, how it powers itself, what is going on. And I've had people say, "Well, Einstein says if you understand something, you can explain it simply." And to that I say, "Well, then I guess college wouldn't exist, would it? Because college takes many, many years." And then they say, "Yeah, but I'm asking you to explain a very simple thing, and college is many things." No, you're asking me to explain many, many, many things. You're actually asking me to explain everything, is what you're asking.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's why flat earth is the one that brings the wolves out, because it crumbles everything. Nothing stands outside of it. Flat earth is the umbrella that 9/11, COVID, they're all under. That's what's going on. That's why the education is so hard to break in people, the indoctrination, because flat earth is the one that destroys everything.
Mm. So true. Do you, without I do want to go into the spinning ball, especially the moon and like all of that sort of information as well. But like when I interviewed Flat Earth Dave, Dave Weiss, I was like, but why? So do you have a definitive answer as to like why the lie?
So that's my favorite question. And I was told by people that Dave doesn't answer that question. For what reason, I don't know. I've heard conspiracies about it. And, there's infighting within the community about why Dave
Yeah.
avoids that question. I don't know. Maybe you've heard that. Maybe you haven't. I don't really
No,
give a
I
shit.
haven't.
He seemed like an all right guy to me. I don't.
Yeah, he was
whatever.
like we had a good conversation about it, and I said why the lie, but he answered it directly. He did have an answer straight away, but I'd like to hear yours and see
Yeah.
what you think.
So that's my favorite question. Why the lie? Again, you're asking me to explain everything, but I'll
Yeah, that's
try
right.
and I'll try and make it as concise as possible. Our reality runs on a couple different things. Debt, which is money, but it's actually debt is what it is. Debt, war, hypocrisy, lies, religion, and indoctrination, I guess,
Sure.
and deceit, right? Those are the things that our reality runs on. Those are all baller things. And the reason I say that is no one has authority over you on a flat earth. We're all equals. It is true. We're all equals. And just because you put a costume on and you have a firearm, that doesn't mean you're an authority figure. You know what I mean? Like you woke up and you had, you know, you didn't feel well this morning, just like I maybe didn't. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
so this power structure, the hierarchical structure of it all, with the magistrate and courts and police and the military, none of that would exist on a flat earth. And that's where this becomes more of an intuitive thing. Commander, I need hard proof. I need numbers that the earth is flat. And I might argue that although there are numbers and observable proofs, I think this is, pardon me, I think this is more of an intuitive knowingness. And once it washes over you, like flat Earth does with a lot of people, one, there's no going back, and two, you realize that a lot of this, like all the bad things in life, war, crime, hate, deceit, politics, those things wouldn't exist if you lived on a flat, non-rotating plane. And I'm not religious. Are you religious?
No.
No. So a lot of people say, Commander, why won't you acknowledge God? Pardon me. Because flat Earth, it does imply that we're intelligently created by an intelligent creator, whereas the ball Earth doesn't. The ball Earth implies a couple things: evolution and accidents and
Yeah.
mysterious big bangs that everyone
Big bang.
seems to, for some reason, agree on. For some
Something
reason,
out of
even though
nothing.
there's no
Yep.
evidence.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we're under a dome, which I'm also dubious of, but if we're under a dome on a flat earth, um, all of a sudden you would be a little more careful with your life. And that's kind of what inspired me to start this social media journey, if you will,
Mhm.
is I'm going to do something meaningful because what I'm doing right now in February is a bunch of ball earth nonsense. I'm working for a paycheck. I'm stressing out. I'm driving on roads with big potholes in them. That's the shit that I'm talking about.
Mhm.
Like, that's the stuff where we need to separate ourselves from. Well, Commander, so what's the next step? You know, what's the next step? We could talk for 40 years on what the potential next step is. So, with all that said, the why is to uphold the stupidity. The why is to uphold the current system of mind control and debt. Debt is the big one because war is a symptom of debt. And if you look into war, it's 100% fabricated. Just about, the violence is real, the destruction is real,
Mhm.
the displacement of indigenous people, that's all very real. People do get bombed to death in war. It's primarily civilians, by the way, if you look at the numbers, but
Of
that's
course.
not for right now. But my point is, things like war and debt are the things that perpetuate the madness, and politics as well. Like, as soon as we all stop paying attention to politics, the whole system will crumble. Like,
Yeah. All your problems go
politics,
away. Yeah.
it's all just theater, and it's for kids, really, is what it is. And I've been a little upset over the last 24 hours seeing all the people who I thought were reliable in the truth sector, I guess we'll
Mhm.
say, talking about some fancy pants debate that just went on yesterday or something. And
Yeah.
I've been going on Instagram and just commenting under everybody, Matrix commentary, comments on the Matrix, Matrix shit, Matrix distraction, because that's what it is. It's
For
just
sure.
keep people focused on stupidity so they don't figure out what they are. And that's why it all comes back to David Icke is remember who you are. And there's so much truth in that. The flat earth, it reminds you who you are. So I hope I'm
Yeah.
not talking in
Look,
circles. I hope I'm peppering in extra,
no pun
points, but
intended. There's
yeah,
look, I am picking up on what you're putting down. I think that do you believe that part of the deception around having a globe model is because when do you believe that in the flat earth plane that we living in or living through multiple timelines? Like, do you believe that in terms of the human species and different civilizations, like giants, if you go back as far as like, pyramids, all over the world and all that kind of stuff, ancient technology, like, do you feel like we are repeating and rinsing and repeating different cycles? Um, and if they were to open up the potential that there's a flat realm that you could continually expand, more civilizations and discover more things, then it would then explode all of the false beliefs around religion, around the timelines of man, like all of the old world would just disintegrate because you're like, okay, well, it's not fucking true. There's a lot of mythology that would be deemed truth, and a lot of truth that would be seen deemed mythology. Am I making sense?
yeah. Are you speaking in terms of like reincarnation?
No, I'm speaking in terms of like say a debate would be slaves built the pyramids. Okay.
Right.
So, but that's if you don't believe in, for example, giants. Okay.
Right. Okay.
Dinosaurs roamed the earth 65 million years ago, but that's if you don't believe in dragons. Like I know
Right.
it sounds extreme, and to some people, like fuck, giants and dragons, like uh, uh, we're not Jack and the Beanstalk here, but it's just like, yeah, but there is evidence of all of that. So if you were to apply a flat Earth model, then you might experience, for example, like Admiral Byrd said, beyond the ice wall, there are lands as big as the Americas beyond the ice wall. So if I could then traverse all of that area, maybe I would be discovering things that would conflict with the Bible, with all religions, that would shatter my paradigm of Earth and how we live. Like we're talking extraterrestrials and things like that. What if it's all on this plane? What if it's all in this timeline or over multiple timelines and it's not in space and interplanetary and all of that stuff? What if that is actual just gas balls and bits and pieces that don't really have any direct implications on this Earth plane? I know I'm rambling, but that's kind of my thought process of why they would continue the lie because anything beyond that destroys the narrative.
Yes. I think that's 100% true. When's the last time you saw the movie The Matrix?
Probably about 12 months ago, maybe 2 years ago.
So in that movie, I think it's the Oracle, perhaps it's Agent Smith that mentions, or no, or it could be the architect, the guy in the room with all the screens. He
Yeah,
mentions that we're on the fifth iteration of the Matrix. And I
right.
always thought that was interesting, even when I was a kid. And it kind of speaks to what you're talking about that there's an old world and that things keep getting reset. And perhaps even like David Icke might say, that we're being recycled, perhaps even the same souls, that we're being recycled for I I'm hesitant to use the term reptilian overlords, but
Yeah,
we're being,
sure.
you know,
Yeah.
I don't even necessarily believe that, but we're being recycled for whatever reason. We'll just leave it there.
Mm.
But it would, yeah, there's so many things I want to say at the same time. But yes, the giants thing, the dragons thing, the other lands. So we can relate that back to what I was talking about with ball earth nonsense.
Hmm.
If there are other lands, if there are aliens or other entities, basically, if there are those things, mermaids, giants, dragons, that means we've been lied to. That means there's other lands. That's ball earth nonsense. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? It would shatter people's reality. And also in the Matrix, Morpheus says people aren't ready to be unplugged. And that's what he's talking about is people will fight and die for their matrix. People will fight and die for their ball earth reality.
Yeah.
It shatters their ego. It shatters their childhood beliefs. They don't want to believe that their dad was an idiot. They don't want to believe that their grandpa died for nothing fighting the Japanese, 100 years or 85 years ago. So
And
it's
no
like,
one, Commander, wants to believe that they have been the fool like this whole time. Like no one wants to look like an idiot, right? Like
yeah,
even though they look at you and I and they go, these fucking two are just like, what are they talking about? They're absolute like bonkers, right? But no one wants to be the fool. No one wants to be, holy fuck, my whole life's been a lie, because that would be the ultimate death.
yeah, that's the ego death. I did an interview for a magazine like 2 weeks ago, and she was, God bless her. I feel like she was trying to get gotcha moments, which I thought were hilarious. But she mentioned something like, how did you stumble upon the flat earth? And I basically said that very thing. I said, it requires an ego death. Yes, you can prove it with numbers and all that, but it's truly an intrinsic realization. And it's very comforting when you realize the truth that you could never be grounded on a spinning ball in space in a void from a mysterious big bang that no one seems to know anything about. But where you can find comfort is in the beauty and the mystery of, you look up at the stars at night and you say, I'm here for a very specific reason.
Hmm.
Whether I put myself here or God put me here or who knows, but there's beauty and mystery in that. And I think that's what the ball earth rips away from us is beauty and mystery. And then
Hmm.
they just, make you work for a paycheck and give all your money to people who they came out and told you that they kidnap and
Yeah,
eat kids.
yeah, absolutely.
So personally, I think that's a problem. But a lot of people seem unbothered by that.
Yeah, that is a problem in itself. I still can't believe
It's
uh
insane.
yeah, it's insane. It really is.
that's,
It's like it's I've been doing a bit of work lately with a coach overseas around hypnosis, and hypnosis is just a fascinating subject, but basically everyone's hypnotized, like everyone's sleepwalking. Not everyone, but like most people. So, and COVID was an amazing example of just how people could be hypnotized into doing unspeakable things. And yeah, it's just crazy. But I digress. For just for the interest of this conversation, I guess what is the most convincing evidence that you found that the Earth is flat and it's not spinning?
Well, I did my own tests very early on in
Yeah.
2014. I did a 2.2 mile laser test over Grand Lake in Colorado. So I
Hmm.
lived in a ski house in Colorado, and me and a close friend, we went and did a laser test. Very simple. We had the level. We put the laser 6 inches. So this was when it was hot. It
Yep.
was just exploding on YouTube. Eric Dubay. You know,
Mm.
and
All of them.
so that was the conclusive one. Was okay. The laser, it's 8 inches per mile squared. So at 2 miles, 8 times 2 times 2, it's at 32. So 32 inches. The laser, it wouldn't be at 6 inches still, and it was.
Mm.
So there's two possible. We can deduce two things from that. Either Grand Lake is the only lake that's flat, truly is flat. So the Earth is a spinning ball, but then Grand Lake is actually a little straight piece.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess that could be one of your results. That was number one. And then the other tests I did were, so I live in Chicago. I already told you that. I did Indiana Dunes State Park. And in 2017, I had a P900. So I lived in Vegas at the time, but I visited Chicago, Indiana Dunes State Park, and it was 43 miles away to the
Hmm.
Chicago skyline. And with a P900, you can zoom in and see street level. And it
Wow.
should be, I think 43 miles is 760 feet. Don't quote me on that, but something like that. It's over 700 feet. And so then you can do the math. How tall is the Willis Tower? And you can see that it's however tall. Well, either they're lying on Google about how tall the Willis Tower is, or the Earth is not a spinning ball in space, because you can see street level from 43 miles away.
Right.
And those were two obvious ones. I'm also really into the stars and the
Mm.
moon. Those are big ones for me, is the stars and the moon.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Specifically
This is the argument that I
specifically
have with my
the
kids.
specifically the North Star is the one that I find the most fascinating, because it makes no sense on a spinning
Mm.
ball in space. But you can't see the North Star. Is that correct?
I don't know. I can't.
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah. Okay.
You would navigate by the Southern Cross.
Yes.
Right. Whereas where I'm from New York. We navigate like when we would play paintball in the woods. Like we would know which way, because we used to play 24-hour games. So we would play at night and
All
we would
right.
navigate with the North Star.
Yep.
And so it never moves, ever, under any circumstance, any time of the year, no matter the weather, no matter the season, no matter
Mm.
day or night. It never moves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a lively imagination like I do, you can come to the conclusion just in your own head, just in a thought experiment, that you're not on a spinning ball. I should have come prepared. You're not on
Mm.
a spinning ball in space that's also tilting and rotating and revolving and all these other things, because at some point, the axis, right? This is the Earth, this is the axis. At
Yeah.
some point, the North Star would move. It's literally that simple. When people want concrete evidence, North Star, end of discussion. It's flat. And then bringing in the P900, that was something that really solidified it. I was also able to sway people with the P900. So I told you I
Really?
lived in Vegas. Yeah, I was seeing this chick in Vegas, and she thought I was a nutcase. This was in 2017. And this was when I got the P900. And we were zooming in on stars, and we were cataloging all the different stars in the sky: Vega,
Mm.
Betelgeuse, Polaris, Sirius. Pardon me. And when you zoom in on stars, it's very, very fucking obvious that they're not uh, spinning balls in space 20 billion miles away. They're shifting and they're rippling, and they're probably not that far away, because why can my $400 Nikon P900 zoom in on
Yeah.
something? It doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. Also, I noticed another weird thing when I was in Vegas. So I think I was 7 miles from the strip. I lived in Summerlin. And when you zoomed in on the hotel's on the strip,
Mm.
it was kind of blurry, not that good. But when you zoomed in on the moon, it was crystal clear. It just made no
Right.
sense. This was seven
Yeah.
miles away, and you can
Yeah.
barely make out the individual windows. Yet I'm able to zoom in on the moon, and I'm talking crystal clear.
Yeah.
It just doesn't
It's
make
not,
any
it's
sense.
not
And the
like the
moon's
Samsung that
239.
have you heard that the Samsung phone imposes an image of the moon when you go close up? Have you ever heard that?
So
If you
that's
zoom in
something
on
that
your phone, no?
Yeah, that's something that a lot of people have to wrap their heads around. They say, "Well, I bought a $300 telescope off Amazon, and Saturn is a spinning ball in space, Commander." And I say, "That's why you need a foundation in conspiratorial stuff before you introduce flat Earth to somebody. You
Yeah,
you
sure.
absolutely have to. You have to know that 9/11 was a big fucking lie. You have to know that they're putting fluoride in the water.
Yeah.
You have to know these things. It's a hierarchical pyramid, like we talked about.
Yeah, I
That's why
hear
a
you.
pyramid is the symbol for everything, because that's
Yeah.
what it is. It's a hierarchy of understanding. And if you have no foundation, which is 9/11, that's
Mm.
the one I always fall back to, because it's so
Yeah,
fucking
yeah. The
painfully
big one.
obvious. But
Mm.
you have to have that foundation before you drop big stuff on people. So, Commander, how come my telescope shows Saturn literally as a spinning ball in space? And I say, well, buckle your seatbelt. This might sound crazy, but you're looking at a digital telescope.
Mm.
And to discount the fact that, first of all, this technology obviously exists. They can superimpose something on a digital telescope. No,
That's
I
right.
mean, they fooled you into thinking that you live on a spinning ball in space. They can do anything. They made you go to work and pay taxes when they told you that they kidnap and eat hundreds of thousands of kids. This is not crazy. you know,
Mm,
it
mm,
sounds crazy and it sounds like a stupid excuse that I'm saying, but you have to realize that's child's play. And to captivate the minds of adults who think that they live on a spinning ball in space, that's lickety split, man. That's
mm.
easy, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, did Samsung do that? Yeah. Is it done on every digital telescope? Yeah. Is it done on all DSLR cameras? Yeah, probably.
Yeah, wow. But you can also take that away and say, with respect to the moon, I can visually see details of the moon with my eyes just like sitting on the beach. So it's just like it can't be whatever it is, 300 and fucking 92,000 kilometers away. Because it's just like I
Yeah.
can just and it's I know people that argue, but it's the mass and all the rest of it. You're like, yeah, but I can see the detail of like the outline and the light and shade of it and all of those sorts of things. And it's just, yeah, like those just very basic observations to me are quite convincing in terms of just evidence to support that. But back to your stars and things like that, I think if you watch any of Graham Hancock's material on like the winter and summer solstice and how certain pyramids and things like that are aligned with the stars and it's say 11,000 years old and it still lines up with the North Star and you're just like how does it do it if we are in fact spinning and rotating and flying through the galaxy at whatever millions of miles an hour. It's like this can't happen. You can't There's no way you could reproduce that result over and over again for 11,000 years straight.
And it would never be that precise. So
Yeah.
yes, like these ancient people, that kind of goes back to what you were talking about different ages and different timelines. These people were hyper advanced. We are infants compared to them, and we're
I agree.
brainwashed infants at that. You know,
Yeah, I don't think we've
less
progressed at all as a species. I think we've regressed
no,
in a lot of
yeah, we're
ways.
going backwards. We're
Mm.
going backwards. Evident by I don't know my car keys that have a key fob so I can get into this building. Like, oh well, Jesus Christ! What if the power goes out? You see what I'm saying? Like technology, it doesn't help us. It really doesn't. I just thought
Yeah.
of that yesterday. I flashed the key fob and then I go, Jesus Christ! What if there's a power outage? I'm locked out. You know, it's
That's
stupid
right.
stuff like that. It's no good. Technology is doing us a massive disservice, and it's brainwashing people on a well, you know, I walk around with my black mirror in my pocket all day, every day,
Yeah, I
you know,
hear. Hey, Commander,
and
what
it's
about
just,
what's your beliefs on space? And like you said before, you're a bit dubious about the firmament. And there is supporting and obviously like not supporting evidence about it, but when you think about all of that and you think about the stars and the planetary, I guess, what they say is the planets in our solar system, like what are your thoughts on that? How do you define where we are within that system, or rockets going through and traveling to the moon and putting a rover on fucking Mars and colonizing another planet? I know that's a loaded question, but what are your thoughts on that?
well, space as it's taught is a lie.
Why?
So up until probably, I don't know, probably the space age. So late 50s, early 60s into the 70s. Um, Planets were always called wandering stars. So all the stars are in a fixed position. And some people know that, some people don't, but they don't move. They move as one, right?
Yeah.
They're not just shooting all over the place. That's not what stars do if you look at them. That's why constellations never move, or, you know, they're always in predictable spots. They all move as one, but there's 8 stars in the sky that move freely, and we've called them the wandering stars. And only recently have we started calling them planets. That's Mercury, Mars, you know, Venus, Jupiter. Those are the
Right.
only stars, the only lights in the sky, I'll say, the only luminaries that move freely, separate from the rest of them as they
Hmm.
shift over our heads. So and they also form geometric patterns over our heads. If you, um, Well, that's how we're able to predict that they're going to align on 3 days ago on the 12th.
Sure.
If we were spinning in a ball in space, you would never be able to predict that. That would be a calculation that would take 500 years to compute.
That's true.
You would
Mm.
never understand where they're all going to be. But we're able to predict where they're going to be because they're in set patterns over our heads. I don't know if you've ever seen those patterns, but
Mm.
they're
No.
basically like harmonic frequencies. Well, when we're done here, you can bring it up or Google it, and you can look at each wandering star. I'll say not planet because planets don't exist. You can look at each wandering star's harmonic pattern that it forms over our heads. Um, and those all coincide with the zodiac, which again is a 15-hour podcast in itself.
Sure.
So the firmament, the stars, I'm dubious of the firmament because I don't have any evidence. It does explain a lot of things. It sure
Hmm.
does. But if there's a firmament, Commander, how does the sun move? What's making the sun move? Well, who's to say that the sun isn't a giant hole poked in the firmament? Who's to say
Sure.
that the moon isn't an old malfunctioning sun? They follow nearly the same path at nearly the same speed, and they are the same size. So who's to say?
Yeah.
These are all great mysteries.
Sure.
Um,
Who's to say that
you could,
they're as far away as what they say they are? They might be just within that skyline, the horizon that we see. Do you know what I mean?
yeah, they're not that far away because you can zoom in on it with the P900. And if you look at Mars, Mars is the easiest one. If you look at Mars specifically through a P900, it's a red, shifting, rippling, glitching light. That's all it is. It is
Right.
not a spinning ball in space. And you can confirm that, pardon me, you can confirm that by yourself. And I think the P900 is like $150 right now. So anyone who's actually curious about this, any listeners, you can get probably on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, you can
Yeah.
find a P900 for extremely cheap. And you can just zoom right in on Mars
Appreciate it.
yourself, and you will
Yeah.
see it's not a terra firma planet. There is nothing to land on. That's propaganda. That's nonsense. And it's also, it adds to the big lie that there's somewhere else to go after we destroy Earth in a great war. We got guys like Elon really pushing for the Mars stuff. We're going to make a base on the moon. That's all propaganda to make you feel small and insignificant. And it's in one ear, out the other, pure made up nonsense. There's no evidence of that. And you can see it with your own eyes. You know,
Mhm.
the stars, the sun, the moon, the firmament. I could only theorize. You would need, rocket ships. How come there's not footage from start to end, start to finish, of a rocket taking off in Cape Canaveral, Florida, and linking up with the ISS? There's over 60,000 satellites allegedly orbiting the Earth at any given time. Why is unbroken footage? Why is that such a crazy request? It's not that crazy. We have the technology. Why is there no picture of Earth from space? Not one. Not one that shows the stars. You can tell what landmass is under you. It's always, 360p. It's always low quality. It always sucks. There's never any stars. Well, you can't see any stars, Commander, because they're on the day side of the Earth. Ooh, it's just so fucking stupid, man. And I have endless questions. Endless questions.
That's good. What about timelines and things like that? So like if right now it's I was just looking at my phone. It's 9:30, right? On in the morning on Sunday. Okay, but you're like 5:30 on Saturday. So like
Mhm.
how do you explain, or is this again part of the lie? Is it again part of the deception that we're on a flat plane, it's afternoon where you are, it's morning the day after where I am? Like what, how do you explain?
No, no, that makes perfect sense. I'll explain it. Here we go. Here we go. Here's the flat. Oh, this is going to be good. Pardon me here. All right, hang on. I'm going to do a little artistry here.
Let's go.
This is going to be very embarrassing. Don't judge me on this. Yeah, so what I'm drawing right now is a rough sketch of the flat plane that we live on, and then I'll make America as AM, and Australia as AUS. This is deeply stupid. We might end up cutting this, but
I can almost see that. Yep. Getting there.
hold up, man. Hold
Yeah.
up.
You need a black text or something like that.
Yeah. All right. We may cut that first one because it's so stupid, but here it
It's
is
all
on
good.
white paper. Here it is on nice white paper. Here's
No.
Australia. Here's America. Okay, so this is something that people have to understand.
Yep.
Um, oh, North is at the center, although it's not the center. It would probably be more like here. Here's Australia. Here's America.
Uh-huh.
People are still, so South would be all along this perimeter. This is
Right.
South. If I'm here, I'm going south, 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 right? If I'm here, south, south. So they're directions, not destinations. That's the important thing to remember.
Got it.
Um, so people are still under this delusion that the moon or that the sun is some gigantic fireball. That's not the case. If this were the land that we know, and this is the size of Australia, and this is the size of America, the
Hmm.
sun would only be this little pinprick right here.
Right.
I've seen some estimations that it's possible that the sun is only 33 miles across, and I think that's part of the connection of where the magical Y33 is such a sacred number.
Yeah, sure.
So how is it possible? Because the what's lighting up our day is this tiny pinprick. So what's lit? This is only the lit part.
I
This is
see.
lit, and then it moves this way. That's what longitude lines are. Or
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the latitude lines. It moves along latitude lines. Latitude, flatitude. That's how you remember.
Hmm.
Longitude goes a long way.
Yep.
So the sun is this pinprick, and it moves in concentric circles. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn, and it moves in these concentric circles. So that's really like the easiest one is
Mm.
well, by the way, Adrian, we might just cut that whole bit. That was nonsense. But
I'm good if you're good, man. I don't
uh,
really do much editing. This
that
is this
that's
is all
that's
good
not gonna
entertainment.
that's not gonna convince anybody of anything. Anyway, um, so that's how we have this brainwashed nonsense in our heads that the sun is a giant fireball. It's not. It's not a giant fireball. It's a
Mm.
mysterious luminary, and I have even fewer answers about the sun than I have for the moon because I can't stare at the sun. It's too bright. But I can, however, stare at the moon, and the moon is also peculiar because it has phases and it seems to so I studied the moon. I wouldn't call myself a moon expert, but I know a lot more than a lot of people. So we'll just leave it at that. But the moon, it powers itself up and powers itself down. And so many, I lose so many people when I say that the moon is self illuminating and I say that the moon casts light. But to me, that's so obvious because I studied it. Um, and the way we can prove that, we can prove it about 20 different ways. I'm not sure if you know any of this. Do you know why the moon is not lit by the sun? Do you know any of those things?
No, tell me.
Oh, okay. Well, your viewers might not know either. So moonlight and sunlight are complete opposites. That's why the symbol of the yin yang exists. It's a representation of opposites becoming one, and that's why it's a representation of the duality of our physical world and how it becomes one. So it's like the oldest symbol. It's thousands of years old, and it's like the perfect symbol. So
Right.
moonlight is dry, preserving, yellow, warm, and it decreases combustion in a fire. And sun shade is cooler than sunlight, whereas the moon is the complete opposite. Moonlight is white, damp, putrefactive, increases combustion in a fire, and the kicker, moonshade is warmer than moonlight,
Hmm.
measurably so.
Wow.
So if you're sleeping outside, uh, we'll just do the most dramatic example to make the point. If you're sleeping outside on a full moon in the field or in the woods, actually instinctively you would find mood shade to be warmer. Animals also do this. Animals don't sleep in moonlight. They they
Interesting.
they instinctively go to moon shade because it's warmer.
Hmm.
Whereas you can drive by a field, a pasture, and you can see cows huddled together, hiding under the shade of the tree because it's cooler. So animals know this. We're the only people arguing about this. We're the only living beings arguing about this. It's insane, and we're so against our natural order. We're also the only living entities that pay to live where we were born.
Mm.
We're the only living entities that pay for water or food or shelter. It's natural to every other being on our plane but us.
Mm.
Um, and these are just objective things. You could just look out in the world and see these things. But the sunlight and the moonlight, they are different. And the moon's phases, it appears to power itself up and power itself down. And I say that, pardon me, and I say that because when you study the moon for long enough, it's so painfully obvious that the sun is not lighting it that it just makes you more and more curious. Because on a new moon, as we saw with all the stuff about the solar eclipse 3 days ago,
Mhm.
a lot of people, including globe heads, they're pointing out that the moon wasn't there. And that's a big part in all this because, pardon me, hang on. A solar eclipse only happens on a new moon. And what's a new moon? A new moon is when the moon's not in the sky. It disappears for 24 to 36 hours, disappears completely. It's nowhere over the earth, doesn't exist, ceases to exist. You can't see it anywhere. There is no black void in the sky. You can
Really?
track the moon. Yeah, you see stars where the moon should be because when you study the moon, you know where it's going to rise and you know the path that it's on. It's on a nearly
Where did it go?
identical path than the sun. Good question. Where does it go? It disappears completely. That's my point, is that it appears to be a conscious entity. There's all kinds of
Right.
things that we relate to a full moon. It's where the term lunatic comes from. More rapes and murders happen on a full moon. It
Yeah.
affects our hormones. It affects our endocrine systems. It
Yeah.
affects women's periods.
Ovulation. Yeah.
There's something about the energy of the moon. Even if you locked someone in a room, they would act more erratically on a full moon. Like
Wow.
even if they didn't know it was a full moon, there's some kind of energy about it. And then of course the sun, like we went over, has the opposite effect on people. It's a
Mhm.
healing, you know. Um, so where does it go on a new moon? Brother, your guess is as good as mine. You can stare at it all you want, and it gives you no clues as to where it's going. It appears to die and become reborn. That's
Right.
evidently that's what it's doing. And the
But is
moon
it not
cycles,
because it's translucent? Like it's a, it kind of disintegrates, not disintegrates, probably a bad word, but it disappears, but it's still there. But it's
like it dematerializes. So that
yeah.
kind of lends a little bit to one of my theories, which is that each observer sees a different sun and moon. It's possible that it's plugged into our software. I'm just speculating right
Sure.
now. It's
Yeah.
popular that it's plugged into our software as living beings on this plane, that we project a different sun and a different moon individually as individuals. Um,
Mhm.
I have no evidence of that whatsoever. I'm just
Yeah.
theorizing right now.
Sure. But
Um,
it has an effect on our energetic system, but it doesn't have an effect on the tides. Is that
no,
what you were alluding to before?
yeah. So Newton jammed in the whole moon affecting. I was just talking to somebody about this like 40 minutes ago on DMs.
Yeah.
Newton jammed that into his theory of gravitation at the very last second, and this is why we can't trust this guy. Like I can't stress that enough. This
Yeah.
guy is a fucking agent. I'm telling you. He was hired. He was hired to fool everybody. It's
Yeah.
stupid. It's so obvious. But anyway, I won't.
Einstein
I
too,
digress.
I've been told.
I've heard a lot of naughty stuff about Einstein. That
Yeah.
I think he's a. I won't say the J word. I think he's a Polish J. And as far as I know, he basically sold his family out so he could escape to America. Or no, he's not
Really? Oh, wow.
Polish, is
Okay.
he? Or no, isn't he Austrian or something like that?
Yeah.
Basically, so Einstein, his last name tells you everything you need to know. But the
Yeah.
word is that he not only married his, I think his first cousin. I think he
Mm-hmm.
married his first cousin, and he sold a bunch of people out so he could escape um,
Oh wow.
the Nazis.
I haven't heard that.
So
I just I remember interviewing Matt Roski, and he was like, You mean to tell me that this fucking dude's working in a post office and he's just coming up with these mathematical equations like he was just a plant to uh dispel like all of these
yeah,
theories of gravity and just all sorts of shit like relativity and all the rest of it. But he said
that's
that,
what they do is they
mm,
place these plants in, and then we end up worshiping them because the textbook said so.
yeah,
And I saw some stuff that he was a post office worker,
yeah.
and it's just like
Worked in the back
Shakespeare.
room.
They sorry.
He worked in the back room of a post office. He wasn't even at the front. Yeah. He was just a shit kicker at the
Yeah,
back doing something.
and then it's also like I heard Shakespeare, his daughter was illiterate, and that Sir Francis Bacon actually was Shakespeare and wrote all his stuff. So
Oh
my
wow.
point is, they implant all these people in your psyche to
Yeah.
worship, but the truth is they're a bunch of fucking liars, or they're idiots. Um,
Yeah. Well,
why do you want me to worship Al Gore for all the climate change nonsense? No, it's false idol worship is what it is, and I don't use that in a biblical term. I use it in a very observable reality term. They
mhm.
want you to worship these people and base your frame of reality, your reference of reality, off what they say. These people are all agents, from Isaac Newton to Einstein. Was Tesla an agent? I guess the word is, someone asked Einstein, what's it like being the smartest man in the world? And he said, go ask Tesla. So if that's true,
Mm,
um, but I do know some things about Tesla. I mean, evidently, he discovered things like teleportation and time travel and teleporting physical objects, possibly even himself.
mm.
But when he died, they did him dirty. He died. I visited the house that he died in New York
So
City.
really?
You
Yeah,
can,
wow.
yeah, you can go right to the hotel room that he died in. And when he
I
died,
don't think
all
so. I think when it comes to Tesla, my opinion would be that if he was a plant, he would be idolized much the same as what everyone else is. I think he's like the poor cousin of the guy that had all these ideas but never made it. And if some of the stories are true, he was kind of robbed of anything good and then cast aside as some quack, like if everything is true of his story, he just died a lonely old man, and then
yes.
wasn't it like Trump's uncle that kind of raided his apartment and took all his shit? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So I mean, look, at
Yeah,
the
I
end of the
heard
day,
that
like
too.
who fucking knows? But and we're sort of going like a way off, yeah, and on a tangent. But it's you do fall into this trap of I understand that there's lies and that there's deception to lead me to a certain just worker bee formation of my life and just carry on, much like you said before about the Epstein files and all that kind of jazz. Everyone's like, yeah, what are you gonna fucking do? Nothing changes anyway, so we're just gonna go to work and pay our taxes and vote for the next guy that's gonna make the big difference because the next bloke is touting all the shit that the old guy did that was wrong. So um, it does. I don't know. Maybe we can kind of end on this because this is an ever evolving and it's just like for want of a better word, looping subject that kind of just keeps coming back to like more and more questions and more answers. Right? Like it's just it's one of those things. But I
Yeah, I've
think
been doing this for 13 years just about, and I just have more questions than when I started.
yeah,
That's
absolutely. But I revel in that curiosity. I kind of like for me, novelty is a big part of, my, I don't know, value systems, I suppose. Like I need new things to be entertained with, and I find it fascinating to explore and to keep discovering and to keep learning. It's just one of those things that I like. Never like learning at school, but I like this stuff. So, and having conversations with people like you is like, to me, it's I don't know, it's nourishing in a way. But it certainly derives like a question, which is, but now what? You know, and what do we do with our lives based on all of that? You know, like if you go from a very esoteric perspective of, you know, you are a divine, unbelievable being that's been placed on this earth. And for a lot of us, we want to believe that we have a reason and a purpose. But like you alluded many times, like if you look at any animal kingdom, no one fucking has like, this is my my purpose in life is to make a difference in the animal kingdom. You know what I mean? They just exist and they do their thing and they, you know, eat grass and fuck each other and, you know, just like, you know, and kill shit. You know, they do
Yeah, it's true.
three things. But we as humans have got this, you know, we there's part of our evolution and part of our being, our energetic system that is tapping into something else that's greater. That's why people love religion and God and seeking a higher purpose, because it gives meaning to what you do. So knowing your belief systems now and rediscovering yourself, you know, for probably the first time in your young life, like, you know, what do you do now?
Um, I don't know if I can talk about that publicly.
Okay.
I'm happy to tell you behind the scenes
Yeah,
what
sure.
exactly I do, but
Well, I mean, not literally what you do now, but like, what do you do with your life going forward now that you know
oh,
this information?
that I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Um,
It's
well,
very
we
much a
can
high
skip that last
level
part.
question.
Did you
Bro, I'm
see me
not
start
skipping
sweating?
anything, right?
Oh
Yeah,
shit! He
yeah.
asked me. No.
Yeah, that's
Um,
all good. Now, your private
um,
life can remain as private as you want.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't cut anything from any episode. I just let it
Oh,
roll.
okay.
All right. But I mean,
Well,
it's one of those things where
we're
um
gonna lose some people with this.
yeah,
They're gonna be like, okay, I was down with this commander guy, and now I'm not anymore.
now I'm out. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
I
what do
don't
you
mind.
do? What do you do? That's the question Flat Earth Dave and I spoke about. What is the next step? And it sounds so weird to say, but to me it seems obvious. But when I throw it out there, it's like, well, okay, it's we have to stop using money. And I know that sounds ridiculous while I sit in this beautiful apartment and
Sure,
while,
sure.
while I have the beautiful car parked outside. I know that
Yeah,
sounds insane, but I'm also contributing to the madness. I'm not in denial of that. I'm aware of that.
sure.
It's like working for money is the machine that keeps the madness going. It's the fuel for the machine. And I think only when there's mass non-compliance, like David Icke talks about, the no compliance dance, only when
Mm,
there's mass non-compliance can anything change. One more election, Adrian, we're going to turn this thing around. No, this is not going to get turned around with an election. That whole thought process, that whole system needs to be dismantled and taken apart. Excuse me. So what do I do? What's the next step? I guess return to nature as much as possible and try and survive. That's literally the first thing that comes to mind, because the concrete jungles, the all this stuff, that's that's not that's not helping, and I'm as guilty as everybody else. So
yeah, sure.
because we have to, am I a shining example? Perhaps not, but at least I'm aware enough to be fully aware of that I'm able to say I'm just as guilty as everybody else getting up and going to work, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so the next step would be abolishing money. Money is the root of all evil. There's a very good reason that's a saying.
Mm. Yeah, I think the actual saying is the love of money is the root of all evil. But I mean, but
Yes.
I do understand the slave system that has been created. I mean, people have to realize that they are slaves. We are modern slaves, and whether we like it or not, that's kind of the the paradigm that we've bought into, and that we have up until this point have had no real evidence to give us any reason to exit. Um, but I would double down on some of the things that you said, but it is to sort of get in touch with nature. But what I like about your story and stories that are similar is that people get in touch with themselves and they really discover who they are. And like you said before, like, nearly an hour ago now, it's like authenticity, is the highest vibration. So, and I think that's why people really gravitate towards someone who's convicted in their mission and all that kind of stuff. My son's just walking past. You past. He's just tiptoeing past so he doesn't make any noise. God bless him. Um, so I think getting to know yourself, and that was my experience, is like I thought the Zeitgeist movies were my awakening to everything. And then I kind of got into the satanic ritual abuse and all that kind of stuff. This is way before Epstein, it was kind of like late 2018, 19. And in here in Australia, I don't know if you know, but we've got our own Epstein list. Like we've got a fucking wild uh satanic ritual abuse history in Australia. Like it's very deep within our culture, and not so much culture, but our society and the history of our country. So, um, but COVID for me was that death, the ego death, because I was literally fucking nailed to a cross, because of my belief systems, and that was like everything come down, the business dissolved, the marriage dissolved, like all of the relationships and the close friendships that you thought were kind of a part of your life forever weren't, and people's the way that they acted and the way that they treated each other in that time, like it was just, yeah, it was pretty wild. But I think getting to know yourself, and often for the very first time, and then living congruently to whatever that truth that you've discovered is, I think is a huge part of it. And I think like the more people that kind of get into that space, the more that they realize that there is like no importance to money and to material possessions and to all of this bullshit that we've been sold that we need in order to get by. Like, I don't know what cost of living's like in America at the moment, but it sounds like it's pretty fucked like it here is in Australia. Like we're paying, you
Yeah.
guys buy petrol in the gallon, right? So like, we're
Yeah.
paying $2.50 a liter for diesel, right? So that's like $10 a gallon, and to live comfortably with my family, like I've got my three boys here, is minimum 100 grand a year just to cover bases. So like
Yeah. Minimum.
you got to earn 150 to 200 to make a comfortable life. And that's just like, crazy. So I think the more people can go, that's fucking ridiculous. And the people that are pulling the strings are making that our reality, and it shouldn't be. And the more we have become more government, like we government ourselves more and less by others. So like, I think the more government dissolves and reduces like over time, but man, that could be eons from
You know
now.
what? You're right. You have a good point. I'm listening to you speak about this, and I'm shifting my perspective. You're right. The first step is to follow your authentic self, and it's probably not going to be an explosive shift. It's going to be a slow burn, and yeah, okay, yeah. The first step is to follow your authentic self, and if everyone does that, or a tipping point, some kind of tipping point, 85% of people do that.
Mm.
It's okay that you're getting up and go to work. We all do that. You know what I mean? It's okay. But if you're following your most authentic self in your free time, it could slowly roll in a better direction, you know?
Mm.
Because would they, I'm not trying to take up your whole morning.
Yeah, all good.
I don't think armed revolution and armed conflict, you ain't gonna go nowhere with that.
Mm.
These people have technology that you can't even imagine to suppress any kind of armed revolt or anything. This what's gonna change everything is not an armed conflict. And I
Agreed.
by no means am saying revolt against the government. That is the opposite. That might be the polar opposite of what I'm saying, because that won't go anywhere. And that'll just be used to further lock everybody down. And
Agreed.
you're Australian, you know what a lockdown is.
Oh yeah, fuck yeah. But what you said before, non-compliance, that's what I've been saying. You can win this war easily without firing a single shot. And
Yes.
that is just to not buy into or not agree upon to any of their bullshit rules and their system. So the more you uninvolve yourself, the more it collapses because it's like I can sell you any bullshit thing to go, this is going to regrow your hair in 7 days. And it's just like as long as I can fucking convince you, I can just keep perpetuating that message and just keep finding a buyer because every minute of every day another idiot's born, right? And so I think the more that people don't buy that bullshit, the more my business goes out of business. So when you look at government, war, medical system, these are businesses and they rely upon
Yes.
everyone buying into that system to keep it going. So that's why I'm like, this 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I go, let's do 2 months to flatten the turds, right? Let's just pull out all of your taxes. Let's pull out all of your interest repayments. Don't pay a fucking utility bill. Don't hold all of that back. And we'll just hold it back until you start to change because that's what's funding this fucking mess. Is like, the moment I break from the system, it's like they can't jail us all. They can't throw us all out of our homes. Like it's just impossible. And I think more of that kind of revolution, in my mind, when I speak it out loud, it kind of makes sense. That I think that's where we need to be.
How old are you?
I'm 48.
48.
Yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to just say you're a really cool guy. I like you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way
Well,
about you.
sometimes you bump into people and you're like, oh, that guy's, but I like you. I think you're really cool. I think you're knowledgeable. I think you're intelligent. I think you got
Thank
a good heart, and that's what I see in you. I think you're a good man. So
thank you. Thank you. Well,
yeah,
I
I
appreciate you
I
saying that.
I
That
believe
really
in
means
you.
a lot. My man. All right, Commander. It's been such a great conversation. I think that's a great place to end. I appreciate your beautiful words. Um, I feel the same way. I think if there's a resonance with someone, like that's why I reach out to people. I feel like there's a connection on some level. I'm big on if things resonate well with me, and sometimes it's off, but most of the time it's pretty right. So I just feel like this information type of conversations that I bring about is me not yelling from the rooftops and screaming and shaking people from the shoulders. It's just like, come on board, man. If you want to fucking, maybe spread a bit of knowledge and a bit of love and a bit of community and a bit of knowledge, like whatever, like you just come on board and have a listen. And if you're not, like, I'm okay with that. This is, I don't have an ad for athletic greens on this. I don't fucking like derive like shitloads of income or stuff like that. I make
Right,
money.
right.
I make good money. So like I'm fine with like doing this as an interest and a passion, that sort of thing. And I've got other dreams and goals and all the rest of it. We won't go into that. But for now, man, how about we say goodbye and we'll keep in touch. Like
Yeah,
I think this evolution of this conversation could go for many hours and across
hours and hours.
many things. So I appreciate you, man. I love your work. I love your stories and everything that you do. I'm amazed that I've only just discovered you, but I now know why, because you only just fucking started.
I
So
just
it's
started.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, you're just a baby when it comes to social media. But I'll link up everything about your work and all that kind of stuff in the show notes. So I encourage everyone to follow along and dip their toe in the water of the flat Earth. I think it'd be great.
yeah. Thank you for having me, man. This has been a wonderful conversation, and it felt very organic and no pressure. And any of your viewers, give me a follow, CMDR Davenport on Instagram. I just started TikTok 2 days ago. That is a dumpster fire. And we got a lot of embarrassing stuff going on TikTok, a lot of bickering and stupidity. So get in on that. But yeah, CMDR Davenport on Instagram. And I appreciate all comments, all DMs. I answer everything. Instagram and flat Earth and being a critical observer is my full time job. So I always answer everybody. If you DM me with genuine questions, I'm happy to leave you, a voice message back and answer it to the best of my ability. And yeah, we'll just go from there and just be your most authentic self. That's my message to everybody. When you're your most authentic self, you'll find that things just start to work. So
Mhm.
thank you, Adrian. You're the man.
Yeah, thank you. We'll touch base soon, okay? You have an amazing day.
All right. You as
All
well,
right, man.
bro.
Take care.